Alrighty, welcome back. I got quite the story for you today. Do you remember Light of Moderum? This game was revealed last November, and pretty much right away from the very first trailer, many people got to thinking, this looks a whole lot like Horizon. Well, after stewing on it for some months, it appears Sony agrees. In fact, they think it might look a little too much like Horizon, to the point where they have now filed a lawsuit. A report from Reuters revealed some details last Monday, saying Sony Interactive has sued Tencent for copyright and trademark infringement in California federal court, accusing the Chinese tech conglomerate of ripping off its popular Horizon series. Now, Sony went on to say in their suit filed last Friday that Tencent's upcoming Light of Moderum is a slavish clone of its games that copies several distinctive Horizon elements and threatens to confuse buyers. And I think it's that point in which they are basically hinging this whole lawsuit on brand confusion. Now, another interesting detail is that evidently Tencent had reached out to Sony wanting to collaborate with them on a new Horizon game at some point last year in 2024. However, Sony declined their offer, and then, as I mentioned, in November, Tencent went ahead and revealed this new game, Light of Moderum, which Sony says in their suit, Light of Moderum features identical gameplay, story themes, and artistic elements to Horizon, as well as many other similarities. I think we can definitely agree there are a lot of similarities, although I don't know about their statement of identical gameplay, which is a point that we'll get to. Now, knowing the aforementioned details, though, of course this game looks similar. If it is in fact the case that Tencent reached out last year wanting to collaborate and make a Horizon game, having had this game already clearly far into production, but then they got denied the rights to use Sony's IP, it does in fact seem like they just went ahead, changed a few things here and there, and then revealed this new game under a brand new IP instead, which wouldn't be the first time something along these lines has happened. Most notoriously, in my book at least, both Warcraft and StarCraft pull some rather clear inspiration from various Warhammer IPs. In fact, it is my understanding that Warcraft initially began production with the intent of being a Warhammer fantasy game, but either they never attempted to, or they did attempt and got denied the usage of the IP rights, so they changed the game and made it into its very own IP instead, and the rest is history. I mean, good on them for doing that, because Warhammer is absolutely massive. Now, I'm not saying these are identical examples, of course not. Moderum definitely looks way more similar to Horizon than Warcraft looks similar to Warhammer, but still, my point is that this sort of situation has happened in the past, and it is likely to happen again in the future, where a developer works on a game, they try to get the IP rights, those rights fall through, and they change it into their own thing at some point in production. It's just not always this blatant as this example seems to be. Also in their lawsuit, Sony referenced video game journalists, oh dear God, as a means of providing evidence for potential audience and brand confusion, stating that various journalists panned the initial reveal of Light of Moderum, outright calling it a knockoff of Horizon, with one outlet naming the game, quote, Horizon Zero Originality. Okay, that's stupid, but it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. And what does Sony want from all of this? Well, they are asking the court for an unspecified amount of monetary damages and an order blocking Tencent from violating its intellectual property rights. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Sony doesn't want to have their IP stolen, and you know what I don't want to have stolen? My passwords. Today's video is sponsored by Bitwarden. So this is an open source password manager, and it's actually the one that I've been personally using for about 2 or 3 years now myself. It's how I generate, store, and manage all of my various passwords across the hundreds of different accounts and logins I've accumulated over the years. And I like it for 3 main reasons. It's straightforward, it does exactly what I need, and it's easy to use. It's also nice because it lets me have a unique password for literally every single account without having to remember them all individually, because I couldn't. Right? So anytime I need to generate new login credentials, it's pretty simple. I log into my Bitwarden account using one master password, and then for whatever website I'm making a new account and password for, I enter or generate a new unique username. I repeat the same process for the password, I save, and then I'm finished. The nice thing too is it gives you full control over how complex or not you want the password and or the username to be. And of course, when you're storing sensitive information like that, you want to make sure it's secure, right? So Bitwarden, it has end-to-end encryption across all of its platforms, whether that's on the web browser, mobile devices, and desktop applications. So Bitwarden offers a premium plan for $10 a year, as well as business plans, but they also have a free version with unlimited logins across unlimited devices. I used that myself for a very long time. I think I ended up purchasing a plan to do like family sharing, but other than that, I was using the free version and it was great. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in the description below. All right, so just how similar are these two games? Obviously, the overall vibe of the two are very similar. They've got the same basic aesthetic. You've got these humans dressed up in tribal-like attire in this post-apocalyptic world that is ruled by machine animals and or dinosaurs. And yeah, many of the creatures themselves, while not exactly identical, can certainly be considered similar lookalikes. A few examples that I just initially noticed checking out the reveal trailer, like they've got these scorpions here, and they are different, but yes, there are scorpion adjacent creatures in the Corruptors in Horizon. This elk-like creature certainly could be considered similar to the Grazers in Horizon, but really it was the bull creature here that to my eye appears to be the most similar to its Horizon counterpart, that being the Broadhead, down even to its yellow-tipped horns. But again, it's really less the game's creatures being one-for-one copies between Modarum and Horizon, and it's more the overall aesthetic and, dare I say, vibe similarities that Sony seem to be going after here. In fact, digging through the lawsuit, Sony themselves have pointed out a few examples that they reference that they consider the most egregious. So let's take a look. Point number 90 says, as shown in the table above, in both games, overgrown wilderness reclaims the remnants of a lost high-tech civilization. Towering coniferous and broadleaf trees stretch skyward alongside crumbling concrete structures, their surfaces draped in vines and moss. In the top row of the table above, Horizon's sunlit mesa and overgrowth cloaked ruin clone almost exactly Modarum's golden lit forest glade, complete with the same sculptural roof lines of a half-buried facility now repurposed by nature. Now, you could look at these two tables side by side and say, yeah, sure, like we've got a forest here, we've got like an overgrown mesa area, we've just got tech stuff that's been reclaimed by nature, right? But even just like the side-by-side shots, I think really do highlight some of the similarities that it seems Modarum clearly took between the two. Point number 93, this one says, the Light of Modarum promotional material shows that Tencent even incorporated elements of the Horizon franchise into the visual environment of Light of Modarum that do not make sense outside of the context of the Horizon franchise. I found this point really interesting. So they say, for example, the physical environments of the Horizon franchise prominently feature patches of red grass in which red-haired Aloy hides while hunting machines, camouflage due to her similar hair color, whereas they do have these similar patches of red-tipped long grasses with characters from Modarum that don't have the red hair. This seems like it could be a stretch, but given the fact that this environmental design was meant to be like camouflage for Aloy's red hair, and they've got this similarly looking long grass with red tips with characters that don't have red hair, so the purpose isn't for the camouflage. Like, yeah, sure, on one hand, they've got long grass with red tips. Who cares? Like that's a thing that exists, but it's an interesting point that they added here. I mean, they're going to put as many points and see what sticks as they can in this lawsuit, right? Speaking of which, let's go on to point number 96, which is headlined as Tencent copied the Horizon franchise's main character, Aloy. As discussed, the main playable character of the Horizon franchise is its huntress protagonist, Aloy, a young red-haired woman depicted wearing tribal apparel and wielding a bow or spear and often wearing face paint. And then they showed some examples of some very similar looking characters in Light of Modarum's promotional materials. I mean, it doesn't look exactly like Aloy, but it looks like a similar archetype to Aloy. That goes without question. And as they continue to show more examples in subsequent tables, the similarities become more and more apparent. I mean, I think especially in this one here, the whole outfit with this white armor type of gear that she's wearing, the official one in Horizon, and then the one in the upcoming game, Light of Modarum. I mean, damn, those look very, very similar, you know what I mean? Much more so than what you could chalk up, I think, to just inspiration or a coincidence. Certainly not a coincidence, right? Point number 98. The Light of Modarum promotional material prominently depicts an Aloy clone, the young female visually expressed in a substantial and confusingly similar manner to Aloy. And I guess that might be the point. Like, if Modarum happened to have red-haired character wearing tribal apparel, that's one thing. but the fact that they so prominently featured this is what Sony is taking issue with. Point number 109 touches on the mechanical animals. Light of Moderum promotional material prominently depicts mechanical animals, which Tencent calls mech animals, that are visually expressed in a substantially similar manner to the Horizon franchise's machines, drawing not only from the same animal types, but other visual elements as well. And then they showcased a few examples of these dog-like mech creatures, hound hunting-like mech creatures, and the one that stood out the most to me is definitely the bull one. I mean, that's the one that seems the most similarly inspired by. Point number 1010 points out that the mech animals are not only substantially similar to the Horizon franchise's machines in their visual expression, the mech animals also share a substantially similar narrative origin and purpose according to the Moderum website. So here's another interesting point. Not just that they look similar, but the reasons they are what they are and what they do is apparently similar. So it says here, like the Horizon franchise of machines, the mech animals each are characterized by a different terraforming ability. For example, in Light of Moderum, the mech animal modeled after the bull purportedly was designed to use its horns for large-scale land clearing operations, which is similarly the case in Horizon. So they're not only taking visual inspiration, but they're also taking backstory inspiration. Once again, we'll go back to the fact that this was reportedly an in-development game that Tencent was trying to get the Horizon IP rights to. So if there were similarities behind the narrative of these different creatures, of course there were, because that's what it was originally intended to be, according to Sony. Point number 111 here says, finally, Light of Moderum's narrative allows players to tame certain robotic animals and ride them across the open world map. Light of Moderum's expression of this narrative element is substantially similar to Alloy's ability to override certain machines and mount them for travel, as discussed above. Although it does appear to be a little bit different, because in the trailers for Light of Moderum, I will note that it appears like they're using a Pokemon-like system where you're capturing these creatures and then summoning them versus Alloy's mounting said creatures, but I digress. Point 120 says, without SIE's consent, defendant's use of the red-haired tribal huntress image, the Alloy lookalike, in commerce is likely to lead to confusion with respect to the origin, sponsorship, approval, or affiliation of their project, which they followed up in the point 121 by saying, for example, across Steam, Facebook, Instagram, X, Discord, YouTube, and Reddit, this Alloy lookalike is rendered as a logo with copper red hair, the same bead and leather trimmings, tribal face paint, headgear made from machine animal parts, and a blue glowing earpiece that unmistakably echoes Alloy's signature portrait, as shown in the examples below. And once more, I want to reiterate here, it's not just that this Light of Moderum game happens to have a red-haired character, it's the fact that it's so prominently featured, as is the case in Horizon games, that really is the big sticker here. And then they go on in points 122 and 123 to point to the Light of Moderum official banner. I believe this was the one that was up on Steam, that does look like similarly framed and stylized and colored to that of the official Horizon Zero Dawn one. Beyond these similarities to Horizon, I want to just point out as well, I do get some strong Monster Hunter vibes from Moderum as well. Some of like the outfits, the armor, and the environments that were shown in the various trailers that we've seen, but also the showcase combat, which goes back to my earlier point. Sony is claiming that the gameplay in Moderum is a copy of Horizon. I don't really get that. In fact, frankly, it just seems much more like a typical action combat game akin to something like a Monster Hunter than it does like Horizon's combat. I mean, looking at this gameplay footage here from the initial reveal trailer and in subsequent trailers, the combat in action, the gameplay moment to moment, this does not scream Horizon to me. This just screams action combat game where you're hunting big enemies. You know what I mean? Like, this could be analogous to any other action combat game. It does not scream Horizon whatsoever. Just specifically talking about the gameplay, because clearly there's a lot of similarities elsewhere. Also, beyond that, I want to note that Moderum appears to be a survival game from what we've heard, with a multiplayer focus. In fact, sections of the announcement trailer even showcase things like base building, with characters placing down production facilities and stairs to climb up the sides of a mountain. On top of that, though, and this is something that's really interesting as well to me, is that the most recent trailers for Moderum appear to be pulling further and further away from any Horizon comparisons. In fact, this gameplay trailer that I saw that was uploaded about 3 months ago, this looks way more distinct with much less emphasis put on the mechanical creatures and the Horizon similarities. In fact, it looks like even the designs and the overall visual style have changed a bit from the initial reveal trailer. I'll point to the character models in particular. They appear much more stylized and far less realistic looking than they did in that initial trailer. It's really interesting and makes me wonder if maybe they were trying to get ahead of a upcoming lawsuit and de-emphasize any potential Horizon comparisons that were so abundantly clear in their initial reveal trailer and that early promotional material. I mean, who knows? So yes, one big reason for Sony's lawsuit that they're claiming is that this game will cause brand confusion with the Horizon brand. Now, I don't think anyone is looking at Light of Mataram and thinking, oh cool, this is the third installment in the Horizon franchise featuring Alloy. Like, you can definitely look at this and think, this sure looks like a shameless clone of Horizon. Like, sure, they're very similar, but it's not identical to the point that I think it would cause confusion, that someone would think this is the next mainline Horizon title. I don't believe that. However, beyond all of the reasons mentioned thus far, I do think there's one other potential reason that's motivating this lawsuit from Sony, and that is the fact that they currently have, beyond Horizon 3, 2 other Horizon games in production that might be visually distinct enough while having some through lines that they are actually worried about that brand confusion. Because again, I don't think anyone is looking at Mataram and thinking this is Horizon 3, but I also think that Sony has some other Horizon games coming down the pipeline that are similar but different enough that then confusion could be found. So this is what I'm talking about. So for starters, Guerrilla Games, the Horizon developer, the mainline franchise developer, they are currently working, besides on Horizon 3, they're also working on a multiplayer Horizon game. From what we have heard, this looks to take some of the core elements of the franchise, but put it in an open world with survival mechanics and Monster Hunter-like activities, where players are going to be tracking and taking down large creatures in groups, which is pretty much exactly what Light of Mataram appears to be doing as well. What's more, though, is I've actually seen leaked footage of this game. It's out there right now on YouTube. You can go search for it yourself. I think it was like a year or so ago when I saw it, but what I want to point out, though, is that that game had a very cartoony, almost Pixar-esque visuals to it, where the character models had exaggerated features and proportions compared to the more realistic-looking characters of the mainline single-player Horizon games. The point of that being, though, is that Light of Mataram looks more like a Horizon game, the ones that we've played so far, than what I saw of that in-production official Horizon multiplayer game that Guerrilla is making. And Sony might be worried again about the confusion. If Mataram looks more like Horizon than their official multiplayer Horizon game that Guerrilla's making, they could be concerned about that for sure. But on top of that, there is also a Horizon MMORPG in development. NCSoft is reportedly making an MMO in the Horizon universe. Now, some months ago, the game was rumored to be canceled. However, that rumor got later walked back. Basically, what happened is that NCSoft canceled a few in-production games. One of the games they canceled was titled Project H. People just assumed that that was the code name for this Horizon MMO, but it turns out that wasn't the case. Project H is actually some other game. The Horizon MMO, which is apparently codenamed Project Skyline, as far as we know, that is still in the works. So again, this is what I'm talking about. No one is looking at Mataram and thinking this is Horizon 3 ? They're thinking this looks like a Horizon spin-off. Like, you could think that. And the fact that Sony not only has Horizon 3, but also 2 additional Horizon spin-offs in production, I think that's the confusion that they're really concerned about here. Now, if you recall, a sort of similar situation happened not too long ago with the game Pal World, where Nintendo had sued them, although that suit was primarily over similar game mechanics, like these catching creatures in a ball that you then resummon into battle later, amongst a few others like riding said summoned creatures. Nintendo wasn't suing, though, because these Power World creatures look an awfully lot like our Pokemon creatures, or that the general vibe is too similar to Pokemon, which again seems to be the major point of contention here in Sony's lawsuit against Tencent. And we'll have to see if that sticks, because again, can you copyright like a similar aesthetic or general vibes of the environment, the world setting, and the narrative? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. what's going to happen with this. It'll be really, really interesting. So we'll have to see what comes. I do know that Light of Monorum was originally scheduled, as far as I heard, to be launching later this year. And I would assume there's a good chance that this lawsuit puts a pause in those plans. In fact, it makes me wonder, maybe we actually get those official Horizon multiplayer games releasing prior to this. I think that survival game from Guerrilla, in fact, has been in production for like 6 or 7 years now. So it may very well be ready sometime soon. We'll see. I don't think it's coming out this year, but maybe early 2026. Either way, if any big developments happen, I will keep you posted. Like I said at the top, quite an interesting story, and I'll keep following up with it. But that's all for today. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. See you in the next one. Take it easy.